Hey there, friend. I have a question for you today. Do you ever feel like maybe God has just forgotten about you? Or maybe you feel like I'm going through this thing. I can't imagine that this is what God had planned for me. He must have lost sight of me for a minute. He must have lost track of me. That's kind of what this story is about today. I don't think that when I sat down with my guests, that was the plan, but that's kind of how it rolled out. One editorial note I wanted to give to you, though, is near the end of this interview, I start talking about a flight that I recently took and a conference that I recently went to. And just to let you know, earlier in the interview, my guest and I were talking about that conference. And because it didn't really have to do with the subject matter of the rest of the interview, I went ahead and cut that stuff out. But yet the story that we have in the end, or the picture, the illustration that we have in the end about the flight, I felt was compelling enough that I wanted to leave that in. So I just didn't want you to be confused when you hear me talking about a flight and you're like, flight, what flight, conference, what conference? I just wanted to kind of clear that up, and I probably just made it more muddy, but let me just go to the story. You'll get what I'm saying. Does God seem hateful to you, like he's looking for ways to trip you up? Does the thought of opening his word seem daunting and intimidating? Hi, I'm Anna, your host for God's Power Stories, where we connect with God's love through the power of his stories. I believe that God loves us more than we can comprehend, and we experience that love through stories. If you're here to connect through stories about the power of God, with the wind of the Holy Spirit at your back, you're in the right place. Let's let God light our path so we can take that next step towards the fullness of life he has planned for us. Grab your cup of coffee, that Diet Coke, or flavored water. Breathe. Let's dig in to God's Power Stories. It is my honor today to introduce you to a new friend of mine, but a sweet, sweet woman of faith. Her name is Tami DeVine. Tami is a mom, entrepreneur, and patriot. She loves Jesus, her two boys, and her country, which is the United States of America. She has worked for ABC, NBC, CBS, and Fox affiliates throughout the country. She ran her own media outlet in the Los Angeles market, reaching 18 million viewers in 7 Southern California counties. Tami has trained hundreds of people internationally and domestically and launched them into their dream TV careers. She has lived and worked in Mongolia and has worked for Focus on the Family. Tami is now the president and CEO of DeVine Family Entertainment. It's the comprehensive one-stop streaming platform where Christians and families can join and just really be inspired by all the things God has for them. With a compelling life story about her birth in Sierra Leone and the story of how God saw and rescued her from a mud hut, the death of her mother and siblings, and abandonment by her father and other relatives, Tami is a sought-after speaker at churches, conferences, women's events, and today she joins us on God's Power Stories. So, Tami, it is a delight and honor to have you here today.
Thank you so much, Anna. I'm so excited. Thank you for inviting me on here. I really appreciate it.
So you have a story to tell. Mud huts in Sierra Leone. I can't even picture it. I've never been there. So paint the picture for us. What do you remember about that time there?
Yeah, well, I was born in a mud hut in Sierra Leone, West Africa. It was just my mother and I. She had elephantiasis in one of her feet, 4 children who all died. I was her only surviving child. By the grace of God, thank you, Lord. And my father had abandoned us. So it was just her and I. The rest of the family abandoned us as well because they thought we were cursed because all these bad things had happened to us. And she was my whole world. We did everything together. I remember her very well. She would walk with me everywhere, even with elephantiasis in one of her feet. She would walk with me to the neighboring village where white American missionaries went to church. my mother and I were the first ones to greet the missionaries when they came to that neighboring village to translate the New Testament into my language, the Lakota language. So I'm from the Lakota tribe in
Mm.
Sierra Leone, that language group. And I always say if anyone looks very closely, they can see I wear makeup, but if you look closely, you can see the tribal markings on my temples and on my cheeks that
Oh,
mark me
wow.
as Lakota. We just fell in love with the missionaries and they fell in love with us. I'm told that I was one of very few, or probably the only African child that would run towards the missionaries to talk to them when other children would run away in fear of their white skin, but not me. God put it in my heart to just want to get to know them and to love them. And I'm so grateful for that. It was a very interesting time. I was really sick. My eardrums had burst, and I'm told those don't really just heal up on their own, but God miraculously healed them. My teeth had rotted out and I had worms, which is
Oh,
very
no.
scary when you're a little girl. But the missionaries gave us medication and not just us, all the villagers around, really, they helped them so much. And they just loved and treated us like we were family.
Can I ask you, with regard to the siblings, where did you fall in the birth order?
Well, I was the youngest. Everyone before me had died. The infant mortality rate in third world countries like Sierra Leone is so high. There's dirty water, there's, food, the nutrition is limited, all kinds of factors. Sickness, there's not clinics and doctors right around the corner like we have. And so babies die in high numbers. And for some reason, God allowed me to survive. I don't
Wow. And
understand.
so by the time you were born, had all the other siblings passed away at that point?
Yeah, I never knew any of them.
Okay, you never knew
Never knew
any
any
of
of them.
them. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow. And you had said that many of your family members had avoided you because they felt like you were cursed.
Yeah.
So, did that also protect her from anybody who might try to harm her? I mean, it doesn't sound like your dad was part of the picture. Was she a single mother in there by herself?
Yeah, she was by herself. And, I don't know all of the details of her story. I was 6 years old when she died, and I was actually in the room with her when she died. And then I was 9 years old when the Kimballs brought me to the US with them, the missionaries. And I can tell more about that in just a little bit. But yeah, she was a single mom, and being on her own like that actually brought more harm to her, right? Because she didn't have the protection really of the group. And so I remember, I think she was in relationship probably with others. And my 6-year-old brain,
Mhm, mhm.
couldn't quite figure out what all that was. But I remember her being in relationship and I remember her being abused. And I remember walking home. That was in Tambiama, in that other village, I believe. But I remember walking home back to Mayumet, back to our mud hut. Also, those relatives, they were somewhat abusive. Some would say they were very abusive. There was one elderly woman who took something out of the fire when she thought I was rebellious, and she held it up to my arm and burned me. In that society, when you are on your own like that, you're the bottom of the totem pole,
Mhm.
especially as women, and that can leave some room for abuse.
Absolutely. With everything that was going on physically between you and and like you said, she was your whole world. She was the one person that you could count on, at least before you met these missionaries. What did it do to you psychologically, emotionally, spiritually? Did you believe, because they were basically treating you like they would be better off without you? What did that do to you internally? Did you believe them, or were you somehow able to rise above that?
Oh, that's a great question. I don't know that I've ever had that question. I love it. I believe that ultimately the rejection of the family members, the rejection of the father, now as an adult and I'm looking back on it and throughout my life, I believe that all of that psychologically gave me abandonment issues and issues of rejection. I've always known the Lord since 6 years old when I was baptized, when the missionaries adopted me and had a good relationship with the Lord. But as you grow up, you get closer to the Lord. And during times, as you're growing up that you're not so close to the Lord, I think you do internalize some of those terrible situations. And so I've been in situations where it's like, oh, you're going to reject me? No, I'm going to reject you first, you know? And
Mm-hmm.
I do believe that that kind of attitude has been like manifestation of that rejection from the very beginning, unfortunately. Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like as I've gotten older and hopefully wiser and grown in maturity in the Lord, that I don't have to be like that. I don't have to be defined by that. I can rest in reassurance that the Lord is my rock. He's my stability. He's there for me when nobody else is. When people abandon me and reject me, God wants me. And it's the
Absolutely.
same for all of us.
Yeah. Beautiful. So take me back. You had said that you were there when your mother passed away. Take me back to that day.
I remember we had started a journey to another village. We were walking there, I think, to visit friends. And I remember my mother stepping in a hole that had water in it. And after that, she just started getting really sick. And
Oh,
she got sicker and sicker, and by the time we reached the village, she was so sick that the men of the village decided they needed to carry her back to our village. And so I remember them carrying her back to the village, and I was, like, running behind, trying to keep up with them, and they put her in the room of one of the homes of our relatives. I remember calling out to her, and she wouldn't respond in the night. I didn't know what was happening as a six-year-old. I just went ahead and curled up next to her and went to sleep. The next day, I was told by relatives that she was dead and that she was never coming back again. And I remember the day of her burial. It was wet, it was rainy. I remember mud. I remember they had wrapped her in a white sheet. The missionaries at that time weren't around. It was some time later that they found out that my mother had died. By that time, my belly had swollen from malnutrition. My hair had turned orange. Apparently, your hair does that when you're malnourished. And I believe I was still abandoned by my relatives, even though I think they felt they were stuck with me. And
yeah.
so when the missionaries came back and they found out what had happened, they asked my two uncles to bring me to them, which they did. The missionaries asked if I would like to live with them, and they said I gave a big speech about how much I'd like to do that. And so I haven't stopped talking since, apparently. But but from that moment on, I was theirs. They adopted me. And what's so good about God and his infinite mercy and his grace and his goodness is he replaced everything for me. So I had no father. He'd abandoned and rejected me. He was not in my life. I had no mother. She had died. I had no siblings. They had all died. And my relatives had abandoned me. Well, God gave me a brand new father, brand new mother, and four new siblings that I would get to grow up with. He's so good. So when the missionaries were done translating the New Testament into my language, they brought me to the US with them when I was 9 years old. And like I said, just loved and treated me as their own and made it possible for me really to get an education and to have adventures that I could never have dreamed of as a little girl in a mud hut in Sierra
Mhm.
Leone, West Africa. God is so
I
good.
I was going to say, I bet your mind was completely blown. I mean, the culture alone was probably so different. The
Everything was so good.
language, everything was so different. So
Yeah.
tell me about some of those adventures that God took you on.
Oh, yeah. Well, the first adventure was when I first came to live with them, and that was ice cream. I
Yes.
didn't know how to describe like, my mother would make ice cream, and I didn't know what it was. I didn't know how to describe it, and at 6 years old, apparently, English, I was just soaking it up like a sponge, and they said I learned it in about 6 months. But the only word I had at the time was hot. The ice cream was hot. I didn't know cold. And so with my new family, all kinds of adventures. We would go camping, we'd go overnights in big caves and, all kinds of new things. They said whenever we'd go to the airport, maybe to pick up a missionary or something like that, they could just see me shutting down mentally because I couldn't really comprehend the
Yeah.
airport and the flights and the big airplanes and everything. And so in the US, definitely learning the culture. It was so fast paced in the US. I remember when we first got there, oh my goodness, I was really shutting down because I just all the cars and the highways and the traffic and then shopping. I was like, where, what is this? So that was a lot of newness for me, but I eventually got used to it and learned the language very well. My accent completely left, and because I was just immersed, this was my family, this was my life, and I became a naturalized American citizen at 9 years old. So I'm grateful that the Lord brought me to this land of amazing opportunity that I would otherwise never have experienced to be able to do all of the things that God has allowed me to do. Other adventures have been working for ABC, NBC, CBS, Fox affiliates and learning the news. That was hard. That was very hard. I had lots of crazy moments live on camera that you don't want everybody to see. But, there was a lot of grace and teaching and learning for me. And I'm so grateful that I had all of those opportunities to just go different places and meet different people, grow thick skin because of
Very important in this
the
business, I'm
adventure.
sure.
Yeah. Lots of adventures.
Yeah. So how did the Lord open the doors for you to get involved in media?
Oh, that's so good. I could probably talk to you all day, but I'll try to do the abridged version of it all. When I went to college, I thought I was going to do secondary music ed because I was classically trained vocally and 12 years on the piano and all of that. Then I realized during the field testing that they do at freshman year that I did not have the gift of teaching. You have to have a special gift, and I did not have it. And so I was taking some mass communication classes and we'd be watching movies and shows and analyzing. And I was like, ooh, I like this. And then I was watching the news one night and I saw the news anchor come on and do the news anchor thing. And then they tossed to the reporter live in the field and the reporter did their report, I'm here at the scene of the fire. And I was like, yes, that I can do that. I want to do that. But they didn't have a broadcast journalism major at my school. But, that's never really stopped me. So I would talk to the professors about it, and they helped me get internships at CBS and the Fox in downtown Chicago, which was, wow, that was an adventure. Talk about fast pace. I hadn't seen anything till I was in those newsrooms, but I loved it. It was an adrenaline rush. And I'm like, wow, this is great. And getting timely information out to the people and the competition with it all with the other stations. I was like, yeah, this is the life for me. And then I got my first real TV job at the ABC in downtown Chicago. And then from there, I got my first reporting job at WYMT, We're Your Mountain Television in Hazard, Kentucky. I had to do everything. That was really hard, but I'm so grateful for that experience because then I got to learn everything that happens in a newsroom, be well-rounded, and that helped in the future with my training, being able to train people in various aspects of the newsroom as well. And then on to NBC LAX 18 in Lexington, Kentucky. Was there for 5.5 years. They gave me a talk show, but it was fun. And I did some great interviews and shows through that. And then on to Los Angeles to run my own media outlet. And then living and working in Mongolia, where I restructured the news division of the largest commercial broadcast TV station there, Mongol TV, and trained a whole lot of people how to do TV news in an international style, created, staff, branded, and executive produced 13 live TV news shows all at the same time without knowing the language. So thank
Wow.
goodness for translators. That's how you know God was a part of that. So it's just an amazing, amazing time. I'm so grateful for all the adventures that God has allowed me to have.
Absolutely. And I'm going to show my ignorance here because I have no idea how far Mongolia is from Sierra Leone.
Oh,
But it made me just wonder, did you ever think about going back there and trying to clarify or resolve anything that was missing for you?
That's so good. Yes. And I have been back to Sierra Leone actually. The summer of 99, I was working for WLEX in Lexington at the time, the NBC affiliate there, and they allowed me to take gear with me when my sister Kim, one of my adopted sisters, was working for a nonprofit there in Sierra Leone. My sister is a registered nurse, and she was bringing prosthetic limbs to the Blood Diamond Civil War victims. So some people may know that movie Blood Diamond that had Leonardo DiCaprio, and it was about the Civil War in Sierra Leone, where rebels were going throughout the country trying to get control of the diamond mines there. And they were just burning and killing. And what they would do with people is they would chop off their arms and legs. So barbaric. And they would ask the question, do you want short sleeves or do you want long sleeves? And that's how they would amputate their limbs. And so my sister would take medical groups and they would bring prosthetic limbs to those Civil War victims. And I got to document that for WLEX in Lexington. What a great honor. So I got to go back to my country, to the place where I was born, and to see really how blessed and fortunate I was that God saw me and rescued me from that situation and brought me to this amazing country. Just the poverty and just terrible things that go on there. The funny thing is that I believe that that's not going to be the end of it. I don't believe that God took me out of that mud hut in Sierra Leone to forget about it and to never do anything else there. So I believe that one day I may have the opportunity to go and do and help that country because there's something off and something very broken, I think, about the giving model that has happened with Sierra Leone and some of these third world or developing nations, is that they're given billions of dollars through NGOs every year, but the people still remain in abject poverty. So something's going on there that's not quite right. It should have been fixed a long time ago, and it hasn't. And if the Lord would give me the opportunity, I believe one day He will, to be able to maybe make a difference in infrastructure there to help the people in a way. I don't know how, yeah, but I'm open to it.
And he's also given you this vision for this streaming service.
Yeah.
So tell us about that, how you felt like you were having the green light from him on that, and what he's done with you so far on that, and what you see as the vision or the future or your goals for that streaming service.
Yeah, absolutely. So after being in Los Angeles for 15 years, it got really difficult for me and my family. God had allowed me to meet my husband at the time there. Unfortunately, we're divorced now, but I met my husband there. We had two children, and we had this amazing media outlet that just trained many people and launched them into their dream TV careers. But business-wise, it was very difficult there, very difficult. And so the Lord opened the door for us to move to Colorado Springs, Colorado, where I am now. And I worked for Focus on the Family there for 3.5 years. It was while I was there, in my downtime and, a little bit of downtime, I might watch something on one of the major streaming platforms, and my jaw would just drop. I couldn't believe every new movie, every new series just seemed like it was trying to outdo the last with how dark and twisted it could be. Now, don't get me wrong, there's some good content on there, and there's even some Christian content on there. I'm not sure how well featured those are, though, but I was just appalled by the new stuff that was coming out. So much Satanism in it, just satanic imagery all over, witchcraft, so much gratuitous violence. And I mean, I don't have to tell you or anybody listening because I think we all know there's an issue there with some of these streaming platforms. I was complaining loudly to the Lord about it. He reminded me really that he'd given me 25 plus years worth of television media and entertainment experience and that I could literally do something about it. And so he just started planting the seeds in my heart of a streaming platform for Christians and families that could package the content just as beautifully and entertainingly as anything that the world could do. But the world's messages lead to death and to destruction of the family and so much damage of our children and our families. Our messages were going to lead to life and to the giver of life. What's interesting about this, Anna, is that my last name is Devine, but this is Divine, like the holy, divine family entertainment. I feel like it's so important to be able to provide this kind of wonderful, amazing content. So movie shows, news, talk, ebooks and audiobooks, and events. God has just been doing amazing things since he created Divine Family Entertainment as a streaming platform, but making it clear that we were not going to be business as usual. We were going to do things very differently than everybody else to create community and to allow people really to understand what the Lord has done for me, that God does for them. If he could see and rescue a little girl out of a mud hut from the most remote corner of the world, God sees and loves them and has plan and purpose for them.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And I love that word steward. You clearly have your heart in the right place. You know it's not you. It's not of all your own efforts. You didn't even know all these people to be able to gather them together. But the Lord planted the seed in you, and then He's been whispering in the ears of other people that can join with you and partner with you and help you realize this dream for God's glory. So I am so excited for you. I'm
Thank
celebrating with you. Do you know when at this point, maybe this is a premature question, as far as when you think that this might launch?
It's not gonna be in my time frame, that's for sure. In my time frame, it would have launched 2 years ago, and we had enough content to have launched with, but God has infinite wisdom and is the Alpha and the Omega, sees the beginning from the end. He is the beginning and the end. And so he put the brakes on us launching too early. Then I didn't understand and got a little upset, like, "Lord, what's happening here?" But now I look back and I see that that was his wisdom, that it didn't happen when I wanted it to. And I want it to happen like yesterday. But God is still doing some things behind the scenes to make sure that we're not a flash in the pan, right? When we launch. And so I believe, and I'm still praying on this, that it would be by early summer. That could happen. Just
Wow, early summer 2025?
yeah, just with the conversations and meetings and people that he's introducing me to, but it could be later, and I'm just gonna trust him in his time.
Perfect,
Yeah.
perfect. And I was thinking about your mother. What do you call her, the mother that you lost in Sierra Leone? Do you call her your mother? Do you call her
Yeah,
by her first name?
she was my biological mother, so that's
Mhm.
how I refer to her, but
Yeah.
her name was Bom Capri in that language, Bom Capri, and I actually named our firstborn son a variation of that name, and so I wanna keep her memory alive. This woman was amazing, you know? She wasn't perfect. I know that she may have had a lot of problems that maybe I wasn't privy to as a six-year-old, but she was unafraid, and she listened to the Lord prompting her, and she went up to these missionaries, and she talked to them and befriended them when she didn't have to. And she listened, I think, to that still small whisper of God's voice to go and meet people who are completely different than her and help them in any way that she could. She helped them a little bit with the Bible translation, although they had a team and a staff to do that for them. But because of her obedience, you know, and because of the obedience of those missionaries, my life was changed forever.
Yes.
And I'm so grateful for that.
Yeah. And while she was there, she laid the groundwork, and the Lord used that. When I was flying home from that conference, I actually thought many times about myself being a kid, and I could be out just in the backyard by the swing set, and I would see these planes way up high, and I would think, "Wow, can they see me?" And I'd be
I still
flailing my
say
arms,
that.
dancing, thinking, maybe they can see me and maybe I'm making them laugh. But you can't see anything like that from way up there. In fact, a lot of times the clouds are below you. You're in the bright light of the heavens, but oftentimes there is a cloud, I mean, a whole carpet of cloud below you. And then eventually you get below the clouds and then you get to kind of start to see. And then you're like, is that a house or is that a compound or is that a lake or is that a street? And, all these things. And then you get closer and you get closer and you get closer. And I thought so many times just on that flight to the conference and then back home from the conference, how even that is so far from where God's throne is,
Hmm.
but yet he has laser focus on us.
Wow.
There is not a single person that he's forgotten about.
That's right.
There is not a single person who has endured something in life that God said, whoops, I didn't see that coming.
Right.
Nothing surprises him.
Amen.
And a lot of things pain him and hurt him, but he has a plan and a purpose in it all. And so talk to that person who's listening right now, who's saying, man, I wish I had a story like Tami because I feel like God's completely forgotten me. What would you say to them today?
Oh, wow. God does have plan and purpose for each of us, and you are living in that plan and purpose right now. Just because your story isn't as shocking and huge, maybe, as what you hear from others, that doesn't mean that you don't have a story to tell. God creates our stories, and when we rest in Him and look to Him, He accomplishes that good work that He started in all of us. Your story may not have all the bells and whistles, but your story is to make such a major difference in the life of your child. That is a huge thing. That's a big story because you're impacting that child and doing for them and maybe helping plant those seeds of the purpose that God has for them, right? That is a great testimony and a great story. It may be that you're going through divorce or a terrible situation with relationships, and that feels difficult, like such a major struggle. God can still use that. It's something that I've had to face. I never thought that would happen to me, and it did. But what's happened is that God has used that pain. A friend recently said to me that God doesn't allow any of the pain that we experience to go to waste. He uses it. So what's happened is that through the divorce that I've gone through, God has allowed me to be able to really minister to other women going through the same situation and just to be a listening ear, an empathetic ear, because I've been there. So you may be going through sickness, or maybe you have experienced the death of loved ones, someone who is so near and dear to your heart. God's not gonna waste that pain either. He has plan and purpose to be able to use you to maybe help others who are experiencing the same things. I loved what you said, Anna, about how God laser focuses in on us. Isn't that amazing? I always say
Yes.
that He made us all so different. God made us very different, but we should celebrate those differences. But the beautiful thing is that He loves us the same, and He has something for each and every one of us, like Jeremiah 29:11 says. And he thinks about us. He has
Yes.
thoughts about us. I did a talk recently too that he dances over us, like he rejoices over us. And I know there are some that are like, "Oh God, dancing? No, I don't wanna hear that." But but like ancient translations are that rejoicing is like it's like jumping and shouting with joy. Like he cares so much about us that he rejoices over us. And that's how he cares about the person watching, about you right now, you know? All that we really need to do is accept that and rejoice right back in Him.
Amen. Amen. Well, I thank God for you, Tami. I am going to be watching your life and your next steps with bated interest because God has his hand on you. I do think with regard to media, God is on the move in media. I
Yes.
am seeing more and more stories of his sovereignty and his love for us coming out all the time. And so I love that you're getting into all this right now with your streaming service and just really excited to see what God's going to do with it.
Thank you so much.
And listener, if you are listening today and thinking, I do have a story and I want to testify to God's power in my life, we would love to hear it here at God's Power Stories. Hey, real quick, if this episode blessed you in some way, I'd love it if you leave a written review for the show over on Apple Podcasts. These are like gold to me. Reviews help me know what you enjoy while providing insight on what you want to learn about. Also, take a screenshot of the review or this episode so that you can share it on your Facebook or Instagram stories. For Facebook, tag me at Anna Moore Bradfield Author. For Instagram, use Anna Moore Bradfield. When I share you back in my stories, both our lights will shine a little brighter. May you witness God's power in your life today, my friend.